All right, let's just wait for the thing to appear. I know my hair is messy as frick, but I don't care. Look, I just took a shower, so, well, I just washed my hair. I didn't take a shower, but pretty much the same thing. Pretty much. Okay, let me wait for... Okay, it's appeared. Okay, perfect. Everything is fine. Should be, at least. So welcome to the first stream of the... I almost said palm. Welcome to the first stream of the Switch Livestream Lecture series. So we're going to be starting off with a classic. We're going to be starting off with the top change. Now, do note that this move isn't meant to be done on camera. It's meant to be done in person. So if I do any like top changes like that, it'll look very, very bad because... Well, first off, there's a horrible angle for the top change. And secondly, if I just do this, this looks really, really stupid. So this is meant to be an in-person move and not on social media. So although it looks very bad on camera, it is very reliable in person. Right, so don't let the simplicity of this move fool you. It is a very good move, and that's why I'm actually explaining it to you guys. All right. So let's go over the quick history of the top change. Well, not so quick because this is probably one of the oldest moves in all of card magic, considering how simple it is. So according to Dr. Will Houston, the first found publication of the top change was actually in an unpublished notebook by an unknown author back in the 1800s. So yeah, in the 1800s. So by now it's like 200 something years old. But if this move was found in a random notebook, then the chances of this move actually being in, well, somewhere else or already like existing around the world, it's a high chance that this move has existed prior to the 1800s, right? Because let's be honest, this action of just doing this, it's not a complicated action, right? Anyone can come up with this, right? So it's like, well, is that not a natural assumption to think that such a simple action could have spread around or been developed throughout the world, yeah, prior to 1800s. I don't think it's necessarily a far-fetched idea, but that's just a random assumption. We don't really have any publications to prove otherwise, right? Now, the first official, so not a random person's notebooks of like publication. So the first official publication of the top change comes from Nouvelle Magie Blanche Dévoilée, which is French for approximately New White Magic Unveiled, by Jean-Nicolas Poncin back in 1853. There we go. So all of the earlier publications of the top change comes from the 1800s. So you can tell that this is indeed a very old move. Now, what's interesting about the publication of the top change in Nouvelle Magie Blanche Dévoilée is that there's ideas for this move that we still use in the modern day top change, or in our modern day top change handlings, right? There's instances where he actually says, like, oh yeah, you have to move forward to gesture to like an audience member, like, oh, do you remember your card, or something like that, right? And this, there's also this very specific corner grip that that's in the book as well. So generally, there's quite a few ideas that's actually in Nouvelle Magie Blanche Dévoilée, which we still use nowadays, which just proves how timeless the top change is. Right? And then the last notable entry that I want to mention about the top changes history is from a German magazine. So I'm gonna try and pronounce it without butchering it. So it is called the Zauberspiegel. Oof. So that is a magazine that was published back in 1895 by a certain Frederick W. Conradi Horster. So in that magazine, the reason why I actually want to highlight that entry was because there was a top change there, except that was actually done from a biddle grip, right? So you would have something like this, okay? And this obviously it's not like a tremendous step up in technique, but it is interesting that there are multiple grips for the top change, right? And that is something that you should know about, right? Also, by the way, the Zauberspiegel is German for the magic mirror. So that's just a translation if you want to know what that means. And yeah, basically the rest of the move's history is, well, history, right? Because the top change by itself has been basically published in every Magic book. There is, I don't know if there's any magician out there who has not at least like published the top change in some degree, right? I know Expert Card Technique has the top change. I know Card Control has the top change. It's basically, even SW Ernest's The Expert at a Card Table has an entry on the top change. It is just that important. So yeah, and basically the only main difference between top changes handlings throughout like publication history is just how people hold the card, right? Or they add like a certain covering action that other people haven't mentioned before. So generally the top change has not changed that much throughout history, right? It's only minor tweaks here and there, and it just really proves how timeless this simple move is. Now, I'll go over 4 grips that you can use for your top change, all right? Just 4 of them, nothing too like fancy. So the first one I want to go over is the bill grip. The bill grip, as per usual, is going to be extremely simple. So the bill grip is your right middle finger, ring finger, and pinky finger are lying on the front short edge of the deck, of the card that you want to switch out. Your thumb is going to be lying on the bottom short edge of the deck. It can be closer to the bottom left corner or closer to the center. It doesn't really matter. And your index is just sort of just resting there, curled on top. All right. So this is just a very, very usual bill grip, right? Or you can actually just shift it over. You can hold the card by the middle finger and the thumb only with the index curled on top, like so, right? And you can still execute the top change as well, right? So that's just the bill grip. Doesn't really change anything. It's just there if you want to do that. But I never really like holding like single or double cards with the bill grip, because this feels like it's a very overbearing grip for so little. So I really only reserve the bill grip for one or for like the complete deck or half the deck. Okay, but if you want to use the bill grip, then this is a choice for you. All right. The next grip that you can use is a corner grip, but from the top, okay? So here we're just going to gently pinch the upper right corner of the card with your index finger and your thumb. Your middle finger is going to be lined up beneath of your thumb, like so, and it's going to be contacting. So the first phalange of your middle finger is going to be contacting the right long edge of the card over here, right? And it's important because this allows you to have a gauge for the top change, right? So when you execute the top change, this middle finger will block and align both cards as you execute the top change, all right? So that is one of the reasons why the middle finger is there. The other grip that we can have is that you just move this grip slightly lower. So then you have basically a center grip, right? So you can hold the card by the center, and it works the exact same way as just a usual top change. All right. I've also seen people do it like so, where instead of the middle finger being there, all of the fingers, so the right, middle, ring, and pinky finger, are just tucked underneath of this card, like so. And they would just execute the top change as per usual. But personally, I like having the middle finger there contacting the right long edge of the card, just so then I have a gauge to align these two cards, okay? And then the grip that I use personally is the corner grip, but from the bottom, okay? So you have something like this. So it's going to be the exact same thing. So your middle finger is tucked underneath of the bottom short edge of the card. Your thumb is going to be clipping the card with your with your index finger, like so. And that's basically the grip. And it's going to be the exact same thing. Your middle finger is going to act as the gauge as you execute the top change, all right? And here you can slightly straighten out your index finger. So then this time, the index finger acts as the gauge as well. So you would have something like this, right? So now you have basically this entire corner to act as a net, for the for the top change, right? So now both the middle finger and your index finger can catch this one card, okay? So that's why I like this grip more, okay? Sorry, let me take a water break. Give me a second. Okay, so I'll be explaining the mechanics of the top change using the corner grip from the bottom because that's the one that I use. But honestly, you can use any grip that you want, okay? So you have a card in your right hand, and that is the card that you want to switch out. And this card is in whatever grip that you prefer to use, right? Doesn't really matter. And the card that you want to switch in is on top of the deck, okay? So I want to switch in this orange card. So to execute the top change, both hands are going to approach one another, and as they do, your left thumb pushes the top card off to the right, okay? So now, what happens is these two cards, you're going to continue moving the two hands together, and these two cards are basically going to coalesce, okay? So this card that you just pushed over is going to slide underneath of this card in your right hand, while your card in your right hand slides on top of it, and it's going to get tucked underneath of your left thumb, while the card on top of the deck is going to slide beneath of this card, and it's going to contact your middle finger and your index as well. So now you have basically coalesced both cards, okay? Also, do note that this alignment does not have to be perfect. This alignment, it can be as sloppy as it gets, right? Because, well, this move is not meant to be burned. This move is meant to be done on an offbeat action. So whether or not it's perfectly aligned, it doesn't matter. And also, this is purely a transitional moment. You should not just stop here, okay? So whether or not this is perfectly aligned, it doesn't really matter, but I do it for the sake of doing it, right? So with both cards actually coalesced with one another, now you can actually execute the top change. So what you're going to do is that you're going to bring both hands away, but now you'll notice that because of pure friction, your right hand is going to drag out the bottom card, while the top card is going to stay behind, okay? So you're going to separate both hands, and from pure friction, this is just going to happen, right? And as you separate both hands, your left thumb is just going to curl, it's just going to curl back, it's just going to bend and retract this top card back on top of the deck, okay? And you're going to continue separating both hands until there's distance between both of them again. And that's basically the top change. It's kind of stupid, right? It's like, oh yeah, you're basically just having both hands separate. They're gonna come together. You're gonna push one card off to the right. They're gonna coalesce, and you bring both hands away, and that completes the top change. Yep, it is just that simple. So you can understand why I said that this move is not meant to be done on social media, because it is stupidly simple, and generally to cover up this action, you need good timing and misdirection to pull it off, okay? So the mechanics are extremely simple. There's really no mechanics to the top change, right? Because the top change is not the mechanics, right? I like to say this because the top change, the 90% of the top change is not the mechanics. It's not how you do the top change. 90% of the mechanics of the top change, 90% of how you do the top change is context based, right? So when do you do the top change, and how do you justify the action of this, right? Without arousing any suspicion. So generally how you would actually handle the top change is that you actually do it on an offbeat, preferably. right? I know some people like to do the top change when all the heat is on their hands, but that's a completely different handling and one that I'm not going to get into. So yeah, it's also not something that I use, so I prefer not really divulging that. So yeah, so let's go over what you should do as a covering action during the like the top change, right? So the top change again should be done during an offbeat. So there are a couple of options for when you want to do a top change. The first thing is that you can obviously just move your deckhand, right? Oops, sorry, I messed that up. You can move your deckhand and then execute the top change, right? So this left hand motion is either your deckhand moves something. So this would be justified by a move of something. This can be justified by a maybe like brushing away something, or this can be justified by a gesture, right? Like, do you remember your card or whatever, right? So that is generally the justification for when your left hand moves forward and then executes the top change, all right? If you move your right hand, on the other hand, you're either going to be gesturing to something, so you would either be gesturing to something, or you would be placing the card elsewhere. So you would move forward, execute the top change, and then place it elsewhere, right? So that's generally the covering action for your right hand moving, right? So yeah, so for these two in particular, so if you choose to move your left hand or you choose to move your right hand, general for these two, this should be done in one smooth motion. This should be done under the same motion as you moving your hand, right? So the beat of the move shouldn't be a top change and then move forward. It should be a move forward or a move forward, like so, right? So everything should be one fluid motion. That is the top change, okay? And the top change should not be its own beat in the sequence, right? Top change should be its own, should be part of the beat of moving forward, okay? So that is the general timing of the top change, right? So you can also do the top change just openly, like so, right? So if you ever feel like it, if you don't really have any reason to gesture forward or just move something out of the way, right? You can just do the top change as is, right? It doesn't really matter, but you have to do it under a moment of relaxation or a breath, right? Like a whoof, right? Like you have to like, there has to be like a moment where the audience's focus is out of your hands before you execute the top change, right? So this should be a moment of relaxation. This should be done on offbeat again, right? So that is the top change. So whether you choose to do it with a move forward or whether you choose it with a whether you choose to move your right hand forward or whether you choose to move your left hand forward to execute the top change, right? It doesn't matter, because if you want to practice the top change, you don't want to just do the same move over and over again, right? You want to find different contexts to play around with. So in certain cases, you would have, I don't know, maybe your left hand moving forward, maybe your left hand moving backward, your right hand moving forward, your right hand moving backward, both hands coming together and then doing the top change. So you want to try and find different contexts to play around with the top change, because you're never going to know when you're going to need to do a top change in a moment that you're not familiar with, okay? So make sure to practice the top change in every single context, because you don't want to be caught off guard, right? So practice with right hand moving forward, right hand moving backwards, left hand moving forward, left hand moving backwards, right? Every single context, moving something, maybe just like brushing something out of the way, placing the card down. So just play around with different contexts and practice the hell out of the top change, okay? So here are a couple of tips regarding the top change. So the first one is, note that the hands never really change positions, never really change grips. All right. So I know for some people, they like to do they like to change grips in the right hand. So I know some people, they like to do like they clip the card in between of the index finger and the thumb, and then they would feed this card in between the index finger and the thumb, and then they would pull this back out, and then there's this weird discrepancy of the thumb just floating there. And I don't know why anyone does this, because it's such an ugly action, and I don't even think it optimizes anything, because it's just, anyways, this is just such a bizarre idea. I don't like it whatsoever. But I know some people do like this, right? I wouldn't recommend it though, because you can't really like repeatedly do the top change. It's just, I don't know, this whole thing is just a weird thing. So anyways, rant over. So for both of my hands, they remain constant, right? They remain like the same throughout the entire top change, and my fingers actually never leave the cards, right? My thumb, my right hand fingers, they never lose contact with the cards. So if I have my thumb and I push this card over and I execute the top change, my thumb is constantly on top of one card at least, right? So yeah, so my fingers should always be on top of this of one card at least, right? And the grip should never change. All right, because the grip never changing is part of the illusion. All right, so you never really want to have any sort of discrepancy. I know I'm doing it with like different color back designs. That's the point. So then you guys can learn easier. But if you're doing with the same back design, you won't be. It'll be a lot more discreet, right? So that is just the first tip for the top change, is that the hands never change positions nor grips. Okay. The second tip regarding the top change is that if you're ever having any trouble with sound, when the two cards actually separate from one another, make sure that these two cards are on the same plane. Make sure that these cards are always on the same plane as you separate them and as you retract them. Okay? Because if these two cards are ever not on the same plane, so if you ever tilt your wrist or anything, notice what happens. This top card gets lifted off. This card as well also gets bent, which means that when you separate these two cards, they snap. And that snap will cause noise. So preferably, you don't want any sort of change in planes, right? These two cards will remain on the same exact plane. Okay? Also, the other thing is that you want to hold the cards very lightly with a soft touch, right? You don't want to like force anything, right? You don't want to focus really on speed. You want to focus on fluidity, right? So you can just relax. You can just let the move just happen, right? You don't really have to focus on just, right? Because obviously with speed, there's friction. So yeah, you don't really want to force the move that much. But just know that because there will always be friction, right? There will always be sound. So if your top change is not completely silent, that's fine. If you get like the slightest bit of, that's fine. All right. That's just going to happen. There's no way of getting around that unless you're in a vacuum or something. I don't know. Right. So don't worry if you can't put a microphone up to your top change. It's, yeah, a completely silent one is just not happening. The third tip that I have for the top change is just relax, right? It's just relax and just do the move, right? If you're very awkward about the top change and you're trying to hide it, it will show, right? Because I noticed that when some people actually perform, just in general, they have their elbows very close to them, almost like they're kind of like a velociraptor or a T-Rex from Jurassic Park, right? And that just shows you how uncomfortable they are with a deck of cards in their hands, and also indicates that, oh, they're about to do something they're not comfortable with. All right, so you want to relax, you want to stand in a natural position and just let muscle memory take over. Okay, so remember that sleight of hand isn't necessarily always done with the hand. Yes, your hands execute the mechanics of the move, but remember that's also done with the body. Your body basically just gestures to everyone. It signals to everyone what you're about to do on a larger scheme, right? So you really want to be comfortable in your own body as you execute the move, all right? Love your content. Missed live, so watching now, 3 p.m. in America. Oh, nice. Thank you. Thank you for saying that. I really appreciate it. So do remember that the top change is done with the body as well. And not just the top change, but every sleight of hand move is also done with your body, right? Just the way that you look up, the way that you lean forward, the way that you lean backwards, maybe you cross your arms, right? Maybe you cross your legs, maybe you shift your body slightly to the right or slightly to the left, right? Sleight of hand is done, is gestured by the body, right? Your hands do the mechanics, but in general, everything is done with the body, right? It's body language for a reason, not hand language for a reason. So really get comfortable in your own skin, and yeah, so remember how your body moves and whatnot, and just relax and trust your instincts for the top change, right? The next tip that I have for the top change is angles. So if you're scared of flashing the top change even with the covering action, so even with moving the box forward or moving or gesturing forward, right, you can actually adjust the angle of the top change so that the spectator sees less of the move, right? So remember how thin cards are? So if I actually hold the card up like this, you can barely see the card's existence, right? So if you line up the thinnest edge of this card with the spectator's line of sight, if you execute the top change, you can actually just barely see the move happening, right? Just barely. Obviously, I'm doing it from an awkward angle, so this might be kind of obvious, but if you line up your angles correctly, this move, you can barely tell that this move is going to is happening, right? So that's basically the most optimal angle for the top change, right? You would have this thin edge align with the spectator's line of sight as you execute the top change, right? And if you have your arm in front of it as well, you basically can't see much as well for the top change, right? So as long as the thinnest part of the card is hitting directly at the spectator's line of sight, you really don't have to worry about like angles as much, all right? If the opportunity presents itself, of course, because generally, again, the top change should be done on offbeat. But if you want it to be like quote unquote invisible, then line the edges up with their line of sight, right? So that is the most optimal angle for the top change. Yeah. So the last tip that I have for the top change is that if you're afraid of doing the top change all in one go, so you're afraid of doing the top change in one smooth action, you can actually break it down to 2 separate beats. All right. So this means if you have your card in your right hand and you choose to, execute the top change, so you would do the top change, you align both cards, and then you would have your right hand move away. Okay, so you would just do the top change, align both cards, and then you just talk normally. Okay, so you're basically so the main context behind this move is that you're just placing the card back on top of the deck, right? They see the general shape of the card, and they can relax, you can talk, you can do whatever. And then when you're ready, your right hand comes back to the deck, and you execute the rest of the top change. Okay, so it's just a, sorry, let me take two separate things. So you have this coalesce, remove your right hand, talk, do whatever, gesture, and then when you're ready, you would come back and then complete the top change. Okay, so the advantage of this is that this is a very relaxed, like handling of the move, right? So the whole thing is meant to be very nonchalant, right? You're just placing the card back on top of the deck, you're just talking, you can either gesture or do whatever, and you could just execute the top change once more. Okay, so yeah, so if you're ever afraid of doing the top change all in one go, or if the opportunity doesn't present itself for you to do it all in one go, they could break it down into 2 beats, like so, right? So this is called the 2-step top change. This was from a book called Simon Says back in 1997 by Simon Lavelle. Okay, so that is something that you can also take note of, just in case you're afraid of doing the top change all in one go. But now let's talk about why you should use the top change. What makes the top change different from other switches? Because obviously there are so many other switches out there, right? There's the double lift, right? I flashed that, but there's the double lift, right? There is the glide, right? There's the glide. So you have the 10 of clubs and they execute the glide. There's the second deal, right? But why would you use the top change if you have all of these other options, right? Well, there's one main reason: isolation, right? No other switch has this one distinct advantage. No other switch has this feeling of isolation, because the card starts in your right hand and it's away from the deck. And throughout the entire process, the spectator should not feel this deck hand approach this card, right? Because again, it's done under an offbeat. So throughout the entire move, this card is seemingly isolated from the rest of the deck, but it still somehow switches. All right, that is not something that the other moves have. For the other moves, they start on top of the deck, and then you end on top of the deck, right? Glide as well. It starts on top of the deck, and then ends on top of. It ends away from the deck, but it still happens on top of the deck, right? Same thing with the second deal. It starts on top of the deck, and it like concludes on the deck, right? So it's like throughout the entire process for the other two, there's always a distinct moment where the switch occurs on top of the deck, right? There's a moment where the spectator sees the card that you want to switch out on top of the deck, which is a problem, because then they could be like, oh yeah, well, it was like on top of the deck. It can like, it was in contact with other cards, so clearly there could have been an opportunity for him to switch it out. That can't happen with a top change if you do it right, if it feels right, because this card is away from deck, and throughout the entire process, it's away from the deck, but the card still somehow switches. So this card is isolated from the deck throughout the entire process, and that is something that other moves do not have, okay? And that is why the top change is actually so much, that is one distinct advantage that the top change has over the other moves as well, okay? So that is why the top change is still being done nowadays. It's because it has this distinct advantage of isolation over here, away from the deck, right? But there's also one problem with it. Because this move is mainly done on an offbeat, this means that this move cannot be burnable, right? This move cannot be like, this move generally is not meant to be like burnable, right? If you do like a double lift, right, you can burn it, it's fine, right? As long as you do a double lift, that's fine. As long as you do a double lift correctly, that's fine, right? If you do a glide, right? You can have your line of sight on my hands, and the switch can still happen. If I do a second deal, right, again, you can look at the deck, and then I would still be able to do the second deal, right? I can't necessarily do that with the top change if my angles aren't right and if I don't have the proper context. All right, so that is one distinct disadvantage of the top change. So that's why I actually encourage all of you to learn as many switches as possible, and just really just bulk up your repertoire with different moves, so then you can have any tool at your disposal when the situation arises, right? Because if you always keep using the same tools over and over and over again, there's a chance that eventually you won't find a proper context for the move, and then you're going to be stuck. So really try and get comfortable with different switches, different contexts, and then you'll be much better off. But on the other hand, because this move is meant to be done on the offbeat, this also means that this move doesn't have to be perfect, right? You can have the laziest alignment and still do it, right? So you can do this, and this is the worst alignment, but I'm still executing the top change, right? So that is just a couple of advantages and disadvantages the top change has over other switches. Now, if you're wondering if the top change can be used as an actual color change, the answer is yes. The top change can be used as an actual color change. So, in Expert Card Technique back in 1940 by G. Newgard and Frederick Browie, there's a move called the Fadeaway card change. It is essentially a top change, but it is done as a color change, which is a pretty interesting idea. So let me try and find two contrasting cards if possible. Oh yeah, that's not gonna happen. Sure, close enough. So the fadeaway card change happens. It's a top change. Let's be honest here. So what you're going to do is that you're going to start off with both hands parallel to the floor, like so. And what you're basically going to do is that you're going to bring your hands up. You're going to bring your hands up to chest level. But as you bring your hands up to chest level, your hands are going to briefly come together, and you're going to execute the top change. And again, the most optimal angle is when the thinnest part of this card hits the line of sight of the spectator. So the moment that the cards hit the spectator's line of sight, you execute your top change, you bring your hands together, you execute the top change. And then as this line starts to exceed their line of sight, that's when you pull your hands away, and then you move onto chest position, chest level, to display that the card has now changed. So it's basically just a 1 and then pull away. So that is the fadeaway card change. So technique-wise, it is the exact same thing as just a normal top change. The only difference is this raising action, right? That's the fadeaway card change. So it'll look like this basically, right? Without all the flashing. So it's this, right? So it's show, here, pull away. Okay, so it's a hop, display. Okay, let me do the webcam actually. So it is here, here. All right, so that is how the fadeaway card change is supposed to. I know, like I didn't want to hit the mic, so that's why it's kind of like awkward, but that's how the fadeaway change is supposed to generally work, right? So again, technique-wise, nothing too difficult or different compared to the normal top change, but that is the fadeaway card change, okay? So if you want to learn more about the top change, there's a lot of resources out there. There's too many resources on the top change. So there's the top change download by David Williamson. There's the top change by Magic Christian. That is a book. There's the David Williamson masterclass. There's the Daniel Garcia masterclass where he teaches something called the perpendicular top change. There is more card manipulations by G Newgard. There's also a whole bunch of tutorials on YouTube, which I highly recommend that you look up on, because, well, having more resources doesn't hurt anyone, right? So, you know, if you look at other people's tutorials like Shin Lim's or Alex Pandrea's or Xavier Spade's, right, it's not going to harm you in any way. You're just going to get a different perspective on the move, and that's fine, right? Having more perspectives on a move doesn't necessarily make it like bad, right? It's actually better, because then you can have a fresh point of view on the move, and maybe you'll find that their handlings are preferable over mine, right? So it's fine. So go look at any of their tutorials. Again, I'll leave the links down in the comments down below, so you can go ahead and check that out as well. Okay. But those are just a couple of resources for the top change if you want to learn more about it. Okay. And that was the first of the Switch Livestream Lecture series. I started off with the top change because it's a very simple move. So it's a pretty, it's going to be like very, like, I think it's going to be a very good like starting point for the Switch series. But like every other Switch out there, right? Like every other simple, I don't know why I said every Switch, like every other simple magic move out there, there's a time and place for this move. And believe me, once you get good with the move, once you get down with the timing and the flow of this move, you're gonna find this move to be extremely reliable. You're gonna find it to be very, like, it's just going to be a move that you're going to rely on as well, right? So don't really knock it out of the park. Don't really knock it off just yet. I don't know, what am I saying? Don't really dismiss this move just yet, just from its pure simplicity. I know a lot of beginner magicians will, but I've used the top change quite a few times, right? And honestly, it's really been a move that I've come to sort of depend on as well, right? Even though I still prefer things like the double lift or anything else, right? So generally, don't deny the top change a chance, because I can guarantee you it will surprise you. And yeah, but do remember to practice it with different contexts, because again, just because you know the mechanics of the move doesn't mean that you know the secret of the move, because the secret of the top change is just the context, right? You need the proper context and motivation for the top change to work properly. So you can like, just because you do this, right? I'm technically doing a top change, right? But it doesn't mean anything. If I want to do like a proper top change, I would do this, right? So practice it, know when to use it, know how to use it, and that is when you'll know that you have top change down. Not just because you can do this, okay? Because anyone can do this, but very few people, or very like only more experienced people will know how to properly justify the top change. So practice it well, know the context behind the top change, and yeah, treat it well. But yeah, that should be about it for me today. Thanks for hanging out with me, and yeah, that is the top change. That was the first of the Switch Livestream Lecture series, and yeah, stay safe, stay happy, stay healthy, yeah, all of that, right? So yeah, see you guys next time. All right, see you, bye bye, and yeah, take care.